about seeing through animals. Now, if you're not familiar with the kind of channel that I have here, this is going to be a spiritual video in which I describe ways in which one can see through animals. This will sound especially crazy if you're not familiar with this kind of spiritual activity, or if you don't believe in spirituality at all, you don't believe that this is possible. It will sound crazy, and that's fine, but there are some of you out there who think that this is possible or interested in ways in which we can do this ourselves. Now, I'm not an expert in the field of, you can say, warging. I'm not an expert in seeing through the eyes of animals, and there are many ways to do it, but let's just discuss some of it. Now, when I want to see through the eyes of an animal, let's just give an example as, let's say a crow is flying around the space above you, and you see it, go further and further out, away from you, and of course, at a higher elevation. You need to focus on a particular detail of that crow, just maybe an edge of its feather, or the way it moves, or perhaps the direction it's going and its particular energy, its particular feel. And every single animal has its particular energetic essence, just like human beings have. It's more apparent in human beings because we're very specific in how we communicate, and we have more individuality and more free reign as far as the capacity of our brains. But when it comes to animals, they're very similar, so it's hard to tell specific details. And this is one of the reasons why you can actually focus on a group of, let's say, a flock of birds and actually see through all of their eyes at once. Now, going back to seeing through a single animal's eye at one time, you take a specific detail that you notice. Maybe it's just the contrast of a little feather or something sticking out off of the crow, or how it's flying against the backdrop of the sky. And it's very hard to do at night because you can't single out that specific detail in the animal. But you focus on that detail, and you kind of latch onto it with your eye, and then you just basically imagine what that animal is seeing. In this case, a bird, a crow, is seeing through its eyes. Now, it will see probably in black and white for many animals, and you have to get a feel for the motion of the head of the animal, how it moves, how it looks, and what it's looking for. And as long as you attune yourself to what it's actually searching for, or what it's trying to do as far as its direction or where it's going, and maybe it's trying to roost, maybe it's trying to find food, maybe it's trying to find a fellow bird. Then you try and focus on what that animal is occupied with at the time, and you focus on a physical detail. And then you try and imagine yourself seeing through the eyes of that animal. And if with enough practice, it'll actually work. A lot of the time, I found that I could see details on top of buildings that I had no idea that there were details there. And that if I focus on it and just keep on staring at that animal and just keep it in my line of sight, it doesn't feel like my sight is within my own body. It feels like my sight has transferred to that animal. And it might seem very weird if I'm just standing still and staring up. But I've done it many times, and when you start to see through that animal, when you start to focus on it, when you truly gain an entry into that, what that animal is, what it's trying to do, and how it sees, and you gain entry into its basic sight, its mind in a way, but not completely its mind, because that's a little bit different than just seeing it through its eyes. But the eyes are very much connected to the activities of the brain. Now, you'll notice details on top of buildings that you didn't know were there, and then you can, of course, sometimes you can check, sometimes you can't get on top of these buildings, or sometimes you can't really ever see the top of this tree or the top of this hill. But when you focus on the animal and you see details on top of things that you really didn't know were there, I would highly suggest, if you can, to go and see if those details actually exist or if you're imagining them. Now, looking at these details, seeing if they actually exist, will help you understand if you were just making up the experience or if the experience was legitimate. And, there's a counter argument that says, okay, well, the human eye and the human consciousness actually takes in more information than most people realize, so you would have that information anyway a lot of the time. But I think that if there is no way for you to directly see from that vantage point the exact details that you saw in that space, whatever you're looking at from the animal, in this case, a point of view of a crow, if there's no way for you to really view those details in their specificity, and that how specific they are is very important, because you want to look at every little detail as much as you can through the bird, and then try to confirm all of those little details that you wouldn't have known otherwise, that you just simply wouldn't have seen, and that the mind itself could not guess. This is the best way to basically fact check your spiritual work of seeing through animals. And there's another way to, if you're trying to see through like the eyes of a dog, you have to kind of have to think about the movement of a dog, the specific aim of that dog at the time, and how a dog sees, what a dog focuses on. And then once you attune yourself to that and you focus on a particular dog, then it will be easier to attune yourself to that site and actually travel into that site and absorb that experience and be one with that experience for a time, depending on your skill level, as far as how much you've developed in this practice. Now, how does this happen? How can we see through the eyes of animals? And the truth is that all of our souls are far more connected than we realize, are far more connected than we like to admit. And I think animals have souls. I think everything ultimately has some level of soul behind it. Now, imagine all of these souls as kind of a net that forms reality, the experience of reality, and really the soul is what is the net of reality, and it's just below the surface, deeper within the matter that makes up our material world, our material plane of existence, and the energy itself also has soul behind it. Now, what we're doing is piercing that materialistic ideology of us just existing in this world, nothing being below it, and we're piercing through that, and then we're piercing the idea that things are separate. That's another layer, and then we're going right into that shared experience that forms the fabric of reality. That's what we're doing when we see through the eyes of an animal. And there are other ways, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be a specific animal, or maybe not even one that exists. You take on all these details, and then you just imagine yourself, maybe you're walking along a path, but you want to see ahead. You imagine yourself as a wolf or a bird, and with all of these details that you've collected previously, maybe even do some research on animals to see how their behavior, how they act, and a bunch of pictures of them. And once you gain enough information and you have enough practice and you are focusing in the correct way, getting rid of all the mental chatter that is so prevalent in the human mind throughout all of history, all the mental chatter that is purely based on simple tasks in this world that are based on either hunger or pain or sleep or being satisfied or being separate. All of these things kind of make a fabric of experience. We're getting past that base experience into the deeper nature of experience and how it's all connected into this fabric. Now, you can make, like I said, a spirit, and you can imagine a dog spirit or a crow spirit or different kind of animal spirits, and then you might go further along the path that you're on if you're walking down a path, and kind of see what's ahead. And you'll have to move like a dog if a dog moves a certain way, or fly like a crow, and imagine how it looks from that crow's vantage point. But it is possible. Now, it isn't easy. And a lot of my background in meditation and magic and really occult sciences and really digging deep into what gods are, what spirits are, the relationship to reality and what reality is. All this has given me great background to make this task a lot easier. So you'll have to, if you're just focused on this task, this ability, then it's going to be a lot harder to manifest it, to basically use that innate ability in all souls that I'm describing. But it is possible, even if you're new to spirituality, you're new to magical practices or occult sciences or shamanism. I have backgrounds in all of these things, so it really helps. But even if you're new to all of this information that I'm throwing at you, then you can still tap in regardless of not having a background in the areas that I've mentioned, because the background really does help as far as what you've studied, what you've read, and there are plenty of books on animal spirits and how to see through them and how to really connect to your inner connection to kind of double positive there, how to really connect to your inner ability of experience that exists as part of the net of experience, which makes up all that we know. We just don't quite understand it completely right out of the womb. We have to learn and remember a lot of our spiritual essence before we can take advantage of these abilities. And it's all about not necessarily learning, but relearning how to go back to that original mold of oneness. But anyway, I think I've ranted enough about this topic for now. This has been a video about seeing through animals. And I hope it was interesting. If you have any questions or any comments, maybe you agree, disagree, shoot it down in the comment section below. If you like this video at all, hit that thumbs up down there. It really helps the channel, and hope to see all of you in the future. And get in touch with that soul that is within you. And that soul is always connected to every other soul. So you have a connection that most of you may not realize. Thank you very much.